Hello and good evening. I'm Melisa Idris. Welcome to Consider This. This is the show where we want you to consider and then reconsider what you know of the news of the day. The Israeli military has continued to carry out air raids across Lebanon while also intensifying its strikes across Gaza over the past 48 hours. Now, this is after Iran launched a missile attack at Israel in response to Israel's deadly attacks against people in Gaza and Lebanon, as well as the assassinations of top Hamas and Hezbollah leaders. Now, amid the soaring violence and escalating tensions, how close are we to a regional war in the Middle East? Joining us now to explore this further is Dr. Ferooze Ali, Senior Lecturer at the Faculty of Law and International Relations at University Sultan Zainal Abidin in Terengganu. Ferooze, thank you so much for being on the show with me. Thanks for joining us today. I'm wondering how you're interpreting the missile attack from Iran on Israel. I mean, maybe you can begin our conversation there, helping us put that into context. What exactly has happened?
So there are a number of reasons to analyze why Iran initiated a second attack on Israel. Number one, first being the collective assassination of various leadership across Middle East closely associated to Tehran, amongst others Nasrallah last September. And we also have Ismail Haniyeh killed in Iranian soil, and Fuad Shukor and the rest of Iranian generals that has been killed inside Lebanon. So in one way or other, the recent reaction from Iran on the 1st of October is in retaliation on all these killings. Now, the second aspect that we should also consider is the magnitude of the attack. Well, Iran has actually launched two attacks. The first is in April this year. The second one is on the 1st of October. Now, if we compare, the intensity of these two attacks, it is clear that the latest attack is way much more. In April, the amount of missiles that has been sent from Iran to Israel is about 110 ballistic missiles. The latest one on the 1st of October, about 180 missiles. Some even speculate up to 200 ballistic missiles. So from here, we can gauge the intensity of such attacks. It is in one way or other trying to show to Israel that, hey, we can get really serious here if you don't get your act right in the region.
Right. So just to follow up on that, right now we have this attack. Iran has said, okay, they have responded, but Israel has promised to retaliate following that the Iranian missiles. Now, how close are we, do you think? Are we on the brink of regional war?
Now, it is really hard to speculate what's going to happen next. But there's one thing for sure, that Israel is going to provide a response. Now, the question is, how hard is the response going to be on Iran? Look, Israel does not believe in symmetrical response. It believes in asymmetrical response for most part. And this philosophy is largely sourced from the Dahiya doctrine, first developed in Lebanon in 2006. So in Dahiya doctrine, it is required of Israel to strike not only the military infrastructure, but both the social and economic infrastructure as a way of pushing the enemy to back down. Now, the question is, would this Dahiya policy be applied to Iran? And if this is so, what would be the response from Iran? Would Iran be pressured to increase the threshold of its potential attack on Israel?
Right. Can I ask you to hazard a guess or speculate as to what your view is on whether Israel wants regional war? Is this something that Israel desires? Are they pushing or angling for the tensions to escalate to the point of regional war? And I'm wondering, this is coming after a year of the genocide in Gaza, where the end game is? I hate to use that word, but for Israel, what is the end point? How do they get out of this war? To what point does the escalating tensions end? What is your view on whether or not Israel is pushing for this war?
Now, there has been a lot of discussion how Israel wants to get rid of Iran as the main threat in the region. And one way of doing it is to drag the United States in this whole quagmire. And with the hope that when both the United States and also Iran goes head to head, Iran will be defeated. And once Iran is defeated, there will be a whole chain reaction in the Middle East. That is, you will get no more Hezbollah at the northern side of Israel. Likewise, for the Houthis in Yemen and also the Shiite groups inside Iraq. Remember, these different groups are funded by Iran, and getting rid of Iran is will likely get the whole ring of fire to be totally decimated.
Okay, so that is what Israel that may be Israel's agenda, but how do we think about the wider Middle East? Would other Arab countries be supportive of a weaker Iran?
Now, we have not seen much speech from different Arab Sunnis region about the need to weaken up what we call it, Iran, but within their policymakers, indeed, there is a wanting to see Iran, a weaker Iran. Iran represents not only a military threat to them, but for them, Iran is also an ideological threat. Iran has the means to finance dissidents in these different countries. For instance, in Bahrain, there is a handful of Shia community in Bahrain. In other GCC countries, there are. So they are seeing the clear link between these two and how Iran can actually push the envelope further in creating some form of movement against this Arab Sunni leadership. So, while they might not make things really clear out loud, but there is some strong sentiment against Iran.
Right, there is an undercurrent there that's not being said out loud. Dr. Ferooze, I have to ask you, what are you watching out next? I mean, we have seen a year of genocide, but in this past week, we've seen attacks on Lebanon and Syria and, multiple expansion of Israeli aggression. What are you watching out next to give you a signal as to where this is headed?
I think it's beyond obvious. The main area that I'm looking at this juncture is how hard Israel is going to respond on Iran. Because the magnitude of response will determine, as I've mentioned earlier, Iranian response, whether they will be pressured to retaliate as soon as possible. The second aspect that I would also try to keep an eye on is how United States is going to manage the whole situation. I believe in one way or other, the United States is not really interested to get in this whole mess. They have an election coming in November, and also their economy is slowly recovering at this stage, while their inflation is slightly higher than what the Federal Reserve suggests to. That is at 2.502, but they wouldn't want to see a total disruption of all supply from the Middle East, which will shoot the price of goods around the world, including in the United States, which will impact the economy further. So we need to look how United States can mitigate the whole situation. I'm sure that backdoor diplomacy is happening as we are speaking in trying to push Israel to be proportionate in its attack on Iran.
Okay, that's interesting. Do you think that there could be a diplomatic solution still on the table for the end of the genocide in Gaza? I mean, is that still is the end in sight for the atrocities that we're seeing in Gaza?
Well, I'm really quite pessimistic on this whole scenario inside Gaza. There are a number of reasons. Number one is the leadership personalities that is involved in Gaza and also in Israel. In Israel, we have Netanyahu, who himself has shown over and over again not to be interested in a negotiated agreement. He initiated the killing of the chief Hamas negotiator, Ismail Haniyeh. And he also, historically, he has been really averse to negotiate with Hamas. And on the other end of spectrum, now we have Yahya Sinwar, who is equally a complex personality. So this different mix of leadership style would make diplomacy hard. And let me also add that the Biden administration has really been ineffective in forcing Israel to engage in a constructive dialogue with its neighbors, with Hamas, with Hezbollah now. So, yeah, if you ask me, I have rather a grim view on this whole situation.
All right. Dr. Ferooze, thank you so much for joining me on the show today. Dr. Ferooze Ali, Senior Lecturer at University of Sultan Zainal Abidin in Terengganu. We're going to take a quick break here on Consider This. We'll be back with more. Stay tuned. Hi, welcome back to Consider This. I'm Melisa Idris. Let's continue our discussion about the soaring violence and escalating tensions in the Middle East. This as the Israeli military continues to carry out air raids across Lebanon after launching their second front in Lebanon amid the ongoing genocide in Gaza in the past year. Joining us now is Muath Seyam, Senior Fellow at the Asia Middle East Center for Research and Dialogue. Muath, thank you so much for being on the show with me today. My first question to you is whether you think the Middle East is on the brink of a regional war. I mean, how are you interpreting Israel's airstrikes and invasion of Lebanon in response to Iran's missile attacks?
First of all, thanks for having me in this show. If we want to address the escalation in the Middle East, we have to look at it from the causes of this escalation first. So when we see escalation taking place in Lebanon, we have to know that it's been going. I mean, the Israeli atrocities and attacks way earlier than Lebanon front has erupted soon. Lebanon has taken a stand in Israelis' genocide against Gaza, and it was clear that Hezbollah, in particular, in the military faction in Lebanon, is supporting and announced that we are going to support Gaza and relieve some of the pressure, the military pressure being used against Gaza. So for that, Israel theory of self-defense is very clear, that if you are going to hit us, we are going to hit you even harder in order to break your spirit of fighting. So they were clear from day one that anyone who will interfere in our operations toward Gaza and our military operations toward Gaza is going to be punished in a way or another. So after almost 1 year and almost finishing the job as they stated in Gaza, now it was the time to look south, to look north, I mean, for the Israelis in the north front, because actually Hezbollah's capabilities, I mean, the military capabilities are very threatening and very challenging to the Israeli security. And from Israeli perspective, they have to address those threats, and they cannot just um, should them under the carpet or something like that.
So just to jump in here, could I ask you how? So Iran's missile attacks on Israel in response to the killings of Hamas and Hezbollah leaders, Israel has promised to retaliate to those missile attacks. Can I ask you where it goes from here? What are you watching out for in terms of escalation or de-escalation of tensions with Israel responding to Iran's attacks?
I think Iran's strike to Israel was not as to be seen as escalation by itself. It's an retaliation of the escalation of the Israeli escalation. And honestly, who knows Iran and who studies Iran knows that Iran is capable of doing way harder than this strike. So Iran is like the aim of the strike is diplomatic message rather than causing damages and affecting the Israeli and maybe escalating a regional war. And Israelis, if they are rational enough, they have to catch this message by Iran. But nowadays we are seeing the Israeli officials and the Israeli prime minister acting crazy and in a kind of madness towards the whole region. And I assume that Iran, as stated by the Iranian officials, they are like done with their waiting for Israel to be more rational and for Israel to stop this madness and this aggression against one front, the second front, and the third front. We don't know where exactly. So Iran keeps watching its allies being severely attacked and under military aggression. It's not going to happen anymore. This is
Muath, just to jump in here, do you think Israel wants a regional war? Do you think Israel is pushing for a regional war?
From my reading and from my analysis, I think Israel is seeing these times as the perfect time for it to finish its enemies, because we are talking about Iran now, like a good or a very reputative power in the region. But if we, as the Israelis say, if we let Iran go away with it from this war, in 5 years we have to face a nuclear power. It's a game-changing thing. And also Hezbollah and Hamas in Gaza and even the Ansarullah in Yemen, if Israel didn't act this way, they think from their point of view that they are passing victory for these sides, which will make them even go harder on Israel next time. And also, if we look about the other side, Israel now, which with its relation with the US, it cannot be better. Like Israel is killing everywhere, and it has the cover that's needed diplomatically and internationally. The veto is there from the US all the time needed, and also the unconditional support by billions of US dollars in aid of weapons and bombs. So why should Israel, I'm assuming, like taking their put myself in their shoes, why should we stop? No one is making us to do so.
Right. I mean, that's a really good point. I do wonder, after a year of war without rules in Gaza, The rest of the world has witnessed these rules being flouted, international law being flouted throughout the past year. Do you think there's been an impact on the global governance system in terms of public faith and public confidence in what international law can achieve?
Of course, without any doubt, like we are seeing like the hypocrisy and the double standards live on television. When we see statements coming out from U.S. Condemning the Ukraine-Russia conflict and condemning Russia for invading Ukraine territories, but on the other side, when we look about what happened in Gaza, you'd rather see any condemnation for what Israel is doing, killing more than 41,000 Palestinians. 15,000 of them are children and women. So this is not an actual war. This is a genocide. So calling it self-defense, I don't think that's the good thing or the correct thing to call it. Yeah. So in addition to the escalation keeps going by the Israelis, and yet U.S. is willing to cover them and support them even in these escalations. We've seen the escalations going to Lebanon and going to reached Yemen, and now the threats reached Iran and even Syria. Mm-hmm. So this is going to shake the trust in the international governance and the international institution. You know that the Israeli prime minister, when he make the order to assassinate the leader of Hezbollah, Hassan Nasrallah, he did it from the UN building after giving the speech in the UN meeting. So that's a clear message to the whole world that Israel has enough impunity to do so. Israel will never be held accountable, and we are above all nations. And this is deep-rooted in the Israeli mindset. And that justifies why they are acting like what we are seeing nowadays.
Well, then I want to ask you, Muath, about the response and the actions of the leaders of other Middle East countries. In the past year, to the genocide that we see happening in Gaza, what was lacking? What would you have liked to see? Particularly now we have invasions of Lebanon. I mean, where would be the red lines for Arab countries to be less silent and more vocal about what's happening with action, backed by action?
I think the Arab nations and maybe some of the Muslim even nations who should be more involved in this recent escalations and genocide taking place. Now we are seeing it in Gaza and Lebanon. The Arab nations are very in a very bad shape and very fatigued policies and mechanism to take action. Actually, they are very weak and very weakened by the internal economic situations, and sometimes their bordering threats. So, and also the control, kind of the control and submission to the U.S. as the big mother for the region. But this is talking about the Arab governments. I'm talking, but the Arab people and the nations of the Arab people are actually boiling, and they cannot keep watching. And we've seen some people taking into the streets, condemning and protesting and saying we are fed up with this, we cannot take it anymore. And actually some of the Arab ambassadors in the UN recently, the Jordanian ambassador announced that we've been trying to convince our people with peace for more than 30 years, and then come with this Israeli extremist government and destroy everything. How to convince nowadays any Arab or any Muslim that Israel really wants the peace, and what happened to Gaza is not going to happen to you. We are talking about those Arab countries, they share borders with the Israeli occupation. So maybe next time the war is taking place in their area, who knows? The Israeli interest and like wish and hopes are not limited. They are asking for the great Israel, which taking place from Iraq till parts of Sudan. So we are not talking about a war with Gaza, and this understanding start building and shaping in every Arab mind. And I think if the Arab leaders are not willing to do something, like seeing Gaza, for example, now for the whole year, 12 months of genocide, and you are not able to break the siege on Gaza and let some aid come inside. Seeing this arrogance by the Israeli leaders and directly insulting the Arabs and Muslims and calling for their death. So I think this will have severe impact on the Arab nations and Arab masses.
Right. Muath, thank you so much for being on the show with me. That was Muath Seyam from the Asia Middle East Research Center for Research and Dialogue. That wraps up this episode of Consider This. I'm Melisa Idris signing off for the evening. Thank you so much for watching. Good night.